Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
This episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast with Sydney Romero, former Oklahoma Sooners softball player, is brought to you by Compassion International. They are the most trusted child development ministry in the world. Recently, I was at a conference out in California, and I got to hear a first-person story from someone who had went through the Compassion program. And this was real life. This was tangible evidence of the great work that Compassion is doing and how it's affecting a child. It literally released this kid from poverty and allowed him to go pursue his dreams, to have hope. And he's now doing amazing things in the business world for Jesus and for others. And that all started because someone took a chance to sponsor this kid and provide him a way out from poverty for $38 a month. And you can make that difference as well. Check out the website, compassion.com/sportsspectrum, compassion.com/sportsspectrum. And in a little while, I'll tell you how you can help release a child from poverty today. Really excited to welcome Sydney Romero, former Oklahoma Sooners softball player, joining us here on the podcast. Sydney, one of the more decorated softball players in OU history, and certainly just in all of softball the last few years. A two-time Women's College World Series champion in 2016 and 2017. A two-time Women's College World Series All-Tournament Team member. A two-time NFCA First-Team All-American in 2018 and 2019. And played in 4 consecutive Women's College World Series from 2016 to 2019. She was selected 3rd overall by the USSSA Pride and now playing pro softball with the USSSA Pride, and then returning in the spring of 2020 as a student assistant with the OU softball team. So she's back with the team, helping out, wants to be a coach someday, and she'll tell you about that and kind of what her duties are and what she's doing now and her desire to become a coach someday back with the Oklahoma softball team. Sydney Romero, she's awesome. I think you're really going to enjoy getting to know her story and her journey to faith. She's got a great faith story as well, and how her time at Oklahoma really helped grow her in her relationship with Jesus. And she'll also tell us why the word joy is so important to her. Take a listen to Sydney Romero, two-time Women's College World Series champion, two-time first-team All-American from Oklahoma, joining us here on Sports Spectrum. Sydney, welcome to Sports Spectrum.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Is it weird when I say former Oklahoma Sooners softball player?
Yeah, it still irks me a little bit. It's kind of weird being an alumni and, being on the other side, but it's a different feeling, but it's awesome.
Well, you're kind of back with the team because you're now a student assistant with the program. What's that role look like for you here in 2020 now that you're back kind of helping out the softball team?
Yeah, so for me, I kind of see my future in coaching. So Coach Gaston has allowed me to stay on staff and learn from her and learn from Coach Rocha and JT and just everyone that's on staff. And it's giving me the ability to coach my former teammates. And I think that's what's so cool is because these girls grew up playing with me, and the fact that I'm able to now kind of be in a role to where I can teach them and just teach them things, whether it's on the softball field or outside of the softball field. I have that opportunity. So I think it's very, very cool, the role that I'm in right now with helping out with scouts or helping out Coach Gaston with things that she needs or just practices in general. I think that's where I lie. But I love it so far.
Is that weird coaching former teammates? I have to imagine it's a little strange.
It is for sure. But I would say that was my main goal my senior year is kind of trying to coach up the underclassmen. So when I left, it was, it wasn't something new to them. And I think being on the other side now, they look at me just the same. I have the same respect. And I think that's what's so cool about this team and the girls that I played with.
What do you think makes a great coach? Sydney, you played for a lot of great coaches, certainly, and Patty Gasso is a legend in the Oklahoma Sooners Hall of Fame, and she was actually on this podcast a year ago, this show at Sports Spectrum. and she's awesome. But what makes a great coach, in your opinion, what you've been through and through your softball journey and what you've seen, what you've learned?
Yeah. To me, what makes a great coach is someone who cares and who isn't afraid to be themselves. I feel like there are a lot of people out there who are kind of just afraid to show who they are inside just for the comfort of others. And I think Coach Gaston does a really good job of expressing who she is as a person and what she believes in. And she just simply cares about her girls and her family and just the people that are around her. And I feel like as athletes, especially from kids who come so far away from home, she makes Oklahoma feel like home. And I think that's what's so important when you go to college.
Yeah, you're not an Oklahoma native, as they say, Sydney Romero. Tell us about growing up and softball and life, and kind of when that yearning and desire to become a softball player and play the game of softball started for you.
Okay, I grew up in California. I have 3 siblings who also play softball and baseball. I have an older sister, Sierra, who played at Michigan. She is now playing with me on USSSA Pride, but she is currently coming off of an injury. So that process has been a little slow for her, but she'll get there soon. And then I have a younger brother, Michael, who is 15, and he is committed to the University of Arizona.
Nice.
Sorry, he's 16, I think.
Come on, you got to know this,
Sydney. I struggle. They just grow up so fast when I'm not home.
I know.
So then I have a little sister who is a freshman, and she is in the recruiting process right now. So, I grew up playing softball when I was 5 years old. I started at a very young age. I was lucky enough to have my older sister that I followed, and I went to all of her games, and I was too young to play with her team, so I would always be the back girl, and I would practice with them every single practice because I wanted to be on the team, but I couldn't. But at the time, I felt like I was. So they would keep me as the back girl for every game. I would dress out in their uniform and everything. So at the time, I was just thinking, I'm just not playing today, but I really couldn't be on the team. But softball runs really deep in our family, and it's something that's super important to us.
Who are the heroes for you as a kid? Who were the athletes that you look up to, the teams? I think you're a Yankees fan, which is something we need to talk about based upon your social media. I could be completely off on that, but you post a lot about the Yankees, and you're a California girl. So help us out, Sydney. What's going on there?
Well, Derek Jeter is my idol. Mm-hmm. I love the way he plays. I just love the way he carries himself and his gamesmanship. That's why I'm number 2. He's a huge part of that. Yeah. And I don't know. I really think the way you carry yourself is very important on the field. And he's someone that I try to almost look like when I'm out there, is because I don't know. Like I said, I just love the way he plays the game. He plays it the right way.
You ever meet Derek Jeter?
No, but one day I'm hoping.
How do you think you would be if you met Derek Jeter? I've met a few of my heroes, not all of them. And I was kind of like, really nervous, and I'm in my 40s now, but I probably would go right back to being like a 10-year-old little boy.
Yeah, I think I would be very starstruck, just staring. Words wouldn't be able to come out of my mouth. I'm not sure. It's
funny. Sydney Romero is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. All right, so you mentioned Coach Gaston and her influence on you. Do you remember the first time you met her and really started that conversation about going to Oklahoma?
Yeah, so I met her at a camp here. I ended up coming on a visit to Oklahoma. A few years back, the recruiting process was a lot different than it is now. You were allowed to recruit any age. So it was the end of my 8th grade year, beginning of my freshman year. And I remember always seeing her at my travel ball games. Mm-hmm. And honestly, Oklahoma was never on my top 5 list. That's not a school that I never thought of coming to Oklahoma. I was always a UCLA fan, Michigan, Florida. I don't know. I was very big on UCLA from being from California. Yeah. And I came to a camp here at OU, and I just remember her just crushing me at the camps. She was all over me. And I was like, wow, this is like my travel ball coach. She had no shame in just, pushing me to my limits. And I remember thinking it was so cool. I was playing shortstop at the time. And I have a coach who was already pushing me at a camp when I'm a freshman. I don't know. I just felt like it just felt so right. And I felt a connection with her. right then and there. And from there on out, it was creating a relationship with her and just really trying to focus on what I wanted coming to college. And she just seemed to fit every single piece that I was looking for.
Some players, though, don't handle somebody being hard on them too well. Was that hard for you to handle being coached up like that? Or was that something that when somebody was rough on you, tough on you in the sense of being a coach, that it was sort of easy for you to handle?
I loved it. I love being challenged, and the fact that I felt that Coach Gaston was always challenging me, I felt like that has made me who I am today. And honestly, it fires me up when someone is getting on me, especially during a game, because I want to do so good, and you just want to do so good for your teammates that I don't know. It's just inspiring, and it makes you want to be better. What's
the line, though, between being tough on a player but being and making that a positive and not a negative? You know what I mean? Because some people can be tough. I've seen coaches, I've seen bosses in my journey when I worked at ESPN that were tough, but they were doing it in a way that wasn't encouraging. It was discouraging. What's the line there for you?
I feel like whenever Coach Gaston would talk to me about something or get on me about something, it was always something that would push me to be better. And it was me almost knowing in my head that she's doing it to help me. And I think it's the way people look at it in the relationship that you have with her. Her and I have a very good relationship that I knew when she got on me, it was for good reasons. And I just feel like, honestly, too, it's the way that you view it. I know there's a lot of people who can view it as maybe, oh, she doesn't like me, or, oh, she's being mean to me. But that is her last thing on her mind. It's just wanting to get you better. And she knows the potential you can reach. And I knew that in the back of my head the whole time. And that's what kept me going.
I love that. Sydney Romero is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. 4 years at Oklahoma, 4 Women's College World Series appearances, 2-time Women's College World Series champion, and an All-American in the last couple of years in 2018 and 2019. Sydney, let's talk about your faith. This is the intersection of sports and faith here at Sports Spectrum. Let's talk about that. Where does that faith kind of take shape for you and kind of grow into what it is today for you?
Yeah, so being a student athlete, I would say it's very hard on weekdays and weekends to be able to go to church and do all the things that you want to do. But here at OU, they provide everything for you. We were traveling weekdays, weekends, and the coolest part is they always find a way to make things happen for things that you guys want. And every Sunday, we would have Bible study. Well, we would have Bible studies throughout the week with our team itself, just with the girls. And then on Sundays before games, Sarah Roberts, I think you guys all are familiar with her.
We love Sarah.
She was our chaplain, and she was just great. The way she applied the word and the way that she applied it to sports was just, it was so fitting at the moment and to this day. And she was just a huge part of my faith, and it has grown ever since I've gotten here to now. And being around Coach Gaston and people who aren't afraid to express it and just kind of, let their voice speak. And it's just very, very inspiring. And it's something that I hope to continue to grow and share with my platform and my social media and anyone who wants to talk about it with me. It's very important to me, and I'm still learning and I'm still growing. So my faith is a huge part of me.
We'll get back to our conversation with Sydney Romero in just a moment, but want to tell you about Compassion International and how you can team up with Compassion and professional athletes releasing children from poverty in Jesus' name. And if you follow Compassion's website or their social media pages, you'll see a guy named Nate Solder on there. Nate is an offensive lineman with the New York Giants, signed a big contract with the Giants a couple years ago, and is all in on Compassion. He did his cleats that they do in the NFL during the special week where they can wear kind of anything to promote on their cleats. And Nate put Compassion on his cleats because he believes what Compassion is all about. They focus on releasing children from poverty. And think about that. Poverty is such a vicious cycle for kids to be stuck in. Safe water, education, medical care, even safe housing are substandard, in many cases non-existent. It results in malnutrition, child labor, abuse, and hopelessness. But compassion comes in. And I love what they do. They work with the local church, 7,000 local churches in 25 countries, delivering God's love and care to children in need, one child at a time. And they're today delivering more than 2 million children from poverty, breaking the cycle of poverty for good because of compassion. Over 66 years, Christ-centered, sharing Jesus with every single child. Man, get involved. They're such good people, and I love what they do. Compassion International does it right. Check out the website, compassion.com/sportspectrum. It's $38 a month for you to sponsor a child in Jesus' name. Compassion.com/sportspectrum, and pray about releasing a child from poverty today. Now back to our conversation with Sydney Romero, two-time Oklahoma Sooners All-American softball player here on Sports Spectrum. Go back to your freshman year when you got to OU and where you were spiritually until, maybe through your senior year, and kind of how you grew. Take us a little bit deeper into that and kind of the maturity level, the growth, the encouragement that you were able to find in learning and growing in your faith, not just with people like Sarah Roberts or Patty Gasso, but even just within your teammates and keeping accountability there.
Yeah, I'm going to take it back just a little bit in high
Sure.
school.
Okay.
So actually middle school. So my dad was diagnosed with cancer in middle school. And I remember my faith being I was kind of just following my parents. And I remember my dad would go to church every single Wednesday. And one day I was like, Dad, can I go with you? And I started going with him every single Wednesday. We went to a church called Revival, and we would go sit up in a coffee shop that they had at the church, and you would watch it just on a TV, and it was just a cool coffee shop, and we would do that every single Wednesday. And seeing my dad lean on God for something that he was really, really struggling with was something that I look back now and I'm like, wow, that is so cool to me, because at the time I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea what he was going through. It was kind of just flew right over my head. And now that I look back on it, I actually just texted him about this yesterday, so it's kind of crazy I'm talking about it today. But it just reminds me of the great times that I had with my dad, and he's just so inspiring to this day. He has always made it out to my games here. I just saw him actually a few days ago in Palm Springs, and just the fact that he was able to teach me, and I felt like he just led me by example of what to do and who I want to be. And my parents are the reasons I am who I am today. But leading up to college, I would say I came in a little bit scared. I was very timid of what I was getting myself into, and I just didn't know the person I was going to be, and I felt like I had a great upperclassman who led me to be the person that I want to be and not be shameful of speaking up or, believing what I believe in. And I think that's what's so special about Oklahoma is you can believe in whatever you want and you can be whoever you want to be. And there is no judging here. And that's something we harp on as a group and as a whole. There is no judgment here. And growing throughout my 4 years, my faith just felt so much stronger each and every year. And like I said, with Sarah Roberts being our chaplain for 4 years, even when she had left to Georgia, we were still FaceTiming her and we were still doing our Bible studies. And I just felt like I grew from my freshman year to my senior year for my faith. And like I said, it's very important to me. So I just felt like a calmness was in my game, like the way I played the game. Everything in life has transferred to my game. And I felt that was so cool, especially my senior year.
Let me ask you about identity a little bit, because I identify you when I introduce you as former Oklahoma Sooners softball player or USSSA Pride pro player or student assistant with OU. And I don't introduce people on this podcast. I probably should in this show as, Sydney Romero, the follower of Christ, which is, probably where all of our identities should be found. But talk about identity a little bit. And because when you're excelling at the level you were excelling at, not just with your team, certainly when you have that much success, but as an individual too, I'm guessing identity can really be a struggle in trying to figure out, okay, I'm not who I am, the softball player. That's just what I do. It's more about my faith and who Jesus is. Can you share a little bit about identity and what you've learned about it over the last few years?
Yes, I would say coming up to my junior year of college, I realized that softball doesn't define who I am. It's just what I do. And that has been something that has stuck with me until this day. And I realized that my performance and the things that I do on the field really do not define me as a person, because a lot of people do know me as Sydney, the softball player.
Right.
And that's why I try my best to use my social media platform that I have with the followers that I have to express who I am as a person and express my faith and express just positive things out there, just because I want them to get an idea of who I am and not just the softball player, because I think your identity is so important. And I think that a lot of people think that, oh, I'm a good softball player, but I'm way more than that. Like, there's so much more to me that I care about that puts softball behind, whether that's my family, my faith, and just everything. And it's just a lot of things that have led up to softball. But I think my identity is very important.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I wonder too, because you had a lot of success on the field as a softball player, especially early on, your first 2 years, and you win a World Series championship, Women's College World Series championship, and you play in the Women's College World Series 4 straight years. So the success as far as achievement in Oklahoma is probably one of the top 2-3 schools standard-wise in the country at just sustaining success, and what makes Coach Patty Gaston so great. But I wonder for you, the lessons that you learn. Do you learn more from winning, or do you learn more from losing?
It's funny you say that.
Why is it funny?
It's a good mixture of both, because my freshman year, even up until my senior year, the class that we had, it just felt like we never lost. And we were always winning. So we were taking things from winning and carrying it into our next game. And I think our class did a great job of that, because winning all the time can be, I would say, a little harmful, because you don't want to get complacent and all that stuff. But there was a time where we had lost, actually, last year, my senior year. Everyone was talking about the winning streak. We were at like a 46 game winning streak or something like that. Yeah. And that was the whole talk up until regionals. And we played Wisconsin, and we actually got beat by them, and the win streak was over. But people don't realize that was the last thing on our mind. We were focusing on just getting to super regionals, because we were in regionals at the time. And when that happened, I mean, it's just kind of it's almost like a slap in the face. Like, you gotta rebound, and you have to do all these things to kind of get your mind back on track. And I remember in the locker room, after that game, we kind of just had a talk with each other, and we're like, we just have to go back out there and do what we know how to do. Like, in order for us to get to super regionals, we have to go out there, play our hearts out, and play who we're playing for, and give it all we got. Because as a senior class, it was either go home or advance. We were either done or we were going on. So that senior class was very special. And the way we looked at the game and the way we played it was, I hope, to be inspiring to others.
Yeah, I think that's very well said, because I think it's in the setbacks where we have our greatest lessons, in my opinion, and that'll be, I think you mentioned your dad, and that's a setback, right? But, you learn more about yourself and your family and even who God is through the setbacks and the trials than you do in the successes. For you, what's the lesson that you learn at the end of your career? And I have to imagine how difficult that was to kind of walk off that field in that uniform for the last time, because it was a tough loss. It was a walk-off against UCLA. They win the title. It's the school. Ironically, you mentioned UCLA earlier in the interview. That had to be kind of weird playing them and seeing your career end against them. But what's the lesson that you took away from that, from walking away and understanding that you can have joy and appreciate your career, but still it hurts?
Right. So our motto towards the end of the season was joy in the journey. And joy is a huge special word for me. I love that word. That's all the girls' middle names in my family. And it's just a word that kind of expresses me and who I want to be. So with that being the word of the season for our team, to be completely honest with you, at the end of the season, I was truthfully at peace with everything. And people would look at me like I was crazy on my team because I wasn't crying. I was honestly just proud. I gave everything that I had, and I just felt like I left it all out on the field. Like there wasn't anything else I could do. And I just felt like for myself, I was at peace with that. And I was okay with the outcome. And I was okay with, the walk-off. It's a weird feeling. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I just felt like, honestly, that God is with me through that whole thing. And I had no reason to be upset with the journey that I've been on and my 4 years there at OU. And I just remember hugging Sarah Roberts after that game. She came down on the field, and she just came up to me and hugged me and told me how proud she was of me. And I have a picture with her that's just popping up in my head right now. But she's been a huge part of me and OU softball. And like I said, I just felt like I was at peace. It's weird to say, but I really was.
No, I think that's joy. I think happiness is fleeting, but joy is sustaining. Joy is forever. And I think that's a great way to explain it. Sydney Romero is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. A couple more questions with Sydney. Let me ask you about your favorite moment. You have a lot of great moments in 4 years playing at OU. And like I said, 2 World Series championships. What's the favorite moment? What's the moment that you look back, and that's got to be hard, I got to imagine, when you have so many of them. But what's the one when you say that was the moment?
Playing or just anything of my 4 years?
Anything. Doesn't even have to be on the field.
Okay, I have one for you.
All right.
I was at church with some of the girls, and I think it was my freshman year. And it was called Summit Church, and that's where Coach Gaston goes. And that was kind of when I was starting to just go to church with my teammates and do all the things that we do as a group. And I remember Coach Gaston saw me in there, and she kind of looked at me and just smiled. And then a song came on. It was called Resurrecting. And it just started playing. And I just remember that song, like the words to it was just kind of emotional. And I was actually sitting next to Coach Gaston, and she had looked over at me and just said, "I'm so happy you're here," and hugged me. And that was something that has stuck with me for so long, because it just shows how much she cares about me and how much of a person over the softball player that I am. And I think that's something that's so special as a coach, because when you have someone who doesn't look at you as a softball player but looks at you as a person, it's so much better than being known like that rather than Sydney who plays softball,
Absolutely. It's interesting when we had Coach Gaston on, I remember talking about softball and coaching, and it was probably the first 5 or 7 minutes of the interview that we did with her. And then when I asked her about her faith, she's like, "This is what I want to talk about. This is the most important thing to me in my life." And it was really refreshing to hear that from the coach, the leader of this legendary storied program that she's living out in a way that is bigger than herself, and she's not caught up in just this, coaching world, which is obviously important, but the platform that God has given her to be able to share her faith was encouraging to me. And I got to imagine playing for her, it was encouraging to you too. Tell me about, lastly, as we close here, last couple questions. On your Twitter page, you have, and it's at Sid_Sid2. Again, Derek Jeter, number 2. What is Matthew 5:14-16? Why is that verse on there? Why is that so important to you?
Yes, I love that verse. I'll read it to you guys right now. It is, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." So that last part, the first part, that you are the light of the world, and the last part, let your light shine before others, I just felt like it fit me so much, because for me, I use my platform to inspire others and to show people who I am, and just being able to let my light shine and kind of spread it out and realize that I'm shining it for Jesus and not for myself. And I feel like that's just what's so important to me, and glorifying him in everything that I do. And I just want people to know that, being a light in this world is so much more important than being a good athlete. And I feel like a lot of that is where it gets mixed up. And I want people to know who I am as a person, like I was saying earlier, and just being able to let my light shine for the right reasons.
I love that verse. It's Jesus speaking, and it's the Beatitudes, and it's just a great passage of Scripture. A lot of guys, athletes, and different coaches who've been on this show have referred to the Beatitudes to read in Matthew 5. Highly recommend, if you're listening, to pick up your word, pick up your Bible, and check out Matthew 5. You will be encouraged by the words of Jesus. All right, Sydney, last question. We ask this to all of our guests here on Sports Spectrum. What's God teaching you today, where he's brought you, where he has you? I know you're in your fifth year, kind of finishing up college, helping out with the OU softball team. You're a professional softball player, USSSA Pride. What are you learning from the Lord today? What's he teaching you?
Today, I'm learning to trust his plan every single day, because being a fifth year, who knows what next year is going to bring for me. I plan to stay here at OU and get my master's. So kind of just trusting in his plan and realizing that he already has a plan for me, and not to stress over that, because it can get stressful at times not knowing what's coming. But just learning to trust his plan every single day.
That's really good stuff there. Sydney Romero, thanks so much for being here on the show. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Really wish you continued success going forward, and all the best to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
That was Sydney Romero, former Oklahoma Sooners softball player. She's awesome. Two-time NFCA first-team All-American, two-time Women's College World Series champion. She's got a great story, and we're grateful to her that she shared it with us here at Sports Spectrum. Give her a follow on Twitter and Instagram, Sydney Romero. Just search her name, you'll find her, and let her know that you heard her story right here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. And many thanks to Sydney for being here. We wish her nothing but the best. Many thanks to you for listening as well. And thanks to our sponsors, Compassion International. For more information about how you can release a child from poverty, check out Compassion's website. It's simply compassion.com/sports spectrum. Compassion.com/sports spectrum. And pray about sponsoring a child today. You can also check out our website, sportspectrum.com. That's the home base for all of our content. You'll find a daily devotional there every single morning at 6 a.m. You'll find every single podcast episode, over 500 podcast interviews, all available to listen to right there at the website, sportspectrum.com. And then subscribe to our magazine. It's an $18 a year subscription. Super cheap, $18 for the whole year. And it gets you our quarterly magazine plus a couple bonus issues. It's a great magazine with a lot of rich content, wonderful pictures, and just a wonderful way to give the gift of sports and faith to someone you love or for yourself. You can subscribe over at sportspectrum.com and simply click the magazine icon, and you're in and good to go. Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to email me, you can hit me up directly, jason@sportspectrum.com, jason@sportspectrum.com, or you can hit us up on our social media pages, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum. We hope you have a great rest of your day. My name is Jason Romano. Thanks for listening.